Hello fellow brawlers, I'm Kairos Time and it is time to brawl. Today we're going to be going over every single brawler and how they are better or worse because of the update. Hope you enjoy the video. What we're going to be doing for today's video is we're going to be covering how this update has influenced the brawler in various aspects. Okay, we're going to be showing gameplay over there of every brawler on the best map that they were for the update, we're going to be ranking them based off of how auto attack is for them, their aiming works for them, their sight, and then also their super as well, ranging from a scale of -3 being like this update really screwed them over in this category to a +3 being this update could be the best thing that possible for this brawler in this category. Now this update, there's a lot of stuff and I know a lot of you have a ton of feedback to give. The best place for you to go and give that feedback is on a pinned post on the Brawl Stars Reddit. If you go there, there's going to be a pinned post that you can submit all of your feedback, and that's going to be the best place for you to put that if you want Supercell to see what you care about. And I know you guys are passionate about the game. You love it just like I do, and you want it to be as successful as possible. So please go submit your feedback there. And of course, I would love to hear what you think about it in the comment section below. One thing that's really important to realize before we jump into this, this is not a tier list where I'm saying these are the best brawlers and these are the worst brawlers. What I'm saying is these brawlers were influenced, hit hardest by the update, and these were positively influenced the most for this update. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into this. Okay, we're gonna go and fly through these really fast. So Jessie, auto, I gave her a -2 because the auto attack for Jessie doesn't really do very much for her because her projectile just moves so slowly. By the time she's fired where that brawler is, the brawler has plenty of time to move out, and especially if they're expecting it. For aim, her shot really takes a lot of precision because her projectile is so slow, so I gave her a -2 for that because it does take some skill to use that. For sight, she gets a little bit of a benefit from being able to pay attention to where brawlers are coming in on the left or the right of her from the sight, and then her super is a really skilled position super. If you just hit the super button, it drops it right where she's standing, and sometimes that's really not what you want to do. And to try and position it into the perfect spot can take a lot of skill as well. Sometimes for her turret, just being one square different from the other can make or break the game, and so her super is really important. Kind of more difficult to play Jessie. Overall, giving her a -5. Up next is Dynamite. He actually also got her a -5 as well for some different reasons. Okay, so he got a -3 for auto attack. Reason why is because auto attack is awful on Dynamite. Okay, because if you auto attack it, it just throws it exactly where that brawler is right when you see them. And think about like a bot. Like if you just run straight towards a Dynamite bot, he'll always miss you because he's always attacking right where you're standing. It's just not very good. So -3 there. He got a -2 for aiming because it takes a little bit of practice to get used to aiming for Dynamite. It's not as bad as some others, but it's okay. He got a 1 for sight simply because it does help a little bit, but not very much. Super, a -1 because positioning is really important for his super, just because it takes a little bit more skill to be able to drop that in the right position. Overall, -5 as well for Dynamite. Barley's slightly better than Dynamite here, okay? So he got a -3 for that auto for the same reason that Dynamite did. He got a -2 for aiming for the same reason why Dynamite did. And then sight, he actually benefits a little bit more from sight just because he's a little bit squishier, and also his projectiles go a little bit further. And his super, I gave him a 0 right in the center because I don't think this is necessarily a really great thing or a negative or really bad thing for him. I just think it's helpful, especially because he can see a little bit further out there, and just, yeah. So overall -3 for Barley, still not a great day for him. One other issue that you do have with Barley and Dynamite is attacking to the lower right hand corner or right below your right to the right of you, simply because there's not very much room right there. Your finger can go off the side of the screen. That's not get maximum distance. So one tip that I have is to try and put your thumb a little bit closer to the center of the map and then swipe there if you need to attack to the right or behind you. Up next we have Piper. She got a -2 for auto simply because it's almost useless to use your auto attack with Piper because there's so much distance between your brawlers. It's going to be difficult. There is one situation where it can be helpful, and that's if brawlers are really close. Piper's a lot less likely to miss shots because of how fast they move, but that doesn't happen too often, and that's where Piper does the least amount of damage anyways. So -2 there. I give Piper a -1 for aim. It's going to take a little bit more practice to obviously get used to the controls, but Piper's shots go really fast, and so even if your aim is a little bit off, sometimes it does work out for you in the end. I gave her a 3 for sight, and the reason why is because in this update, she can see almost anywhere along the map, and there's only a small little portion right up that you can't see at the end of her projectile, and that means that she has the whole map. She can dominate the whole map if she's playing on the sides. That's a huge buff to Piper, especially because she does maximum damage from a further distance away. In addition, her super, I gave her a -2. It's kind of awkward. If you hit her super and just hit the button, she just goes straight up and drops those bombs right there, and she doesn't go towards anybody, she doesn't go away from anybody or anything like that. It's just like, well, that's awkward. So you have to swipe with her. This means that overall Piper has a -2 for this update. Okay, now let's go and talk about Brock. He got a -1 in comparison to Piper, who got a -2 for auto attack. The reason why is because Brock is going to be able to do a ton of damage if he has full ammo and somebody's close up to him. Just like launch 3 rockets right there, and almost any brawler is going to be dead because of that. So -1 right there, because most of the time you don't want to use that auto attack, because further away the auto attack's just not very good there. Now his aim similar to Piper, except he got a little bit lower score at -2, simply because his shots do take a little bit longer to travel to their destination. For sight, also a big 3. Like, this is a huge buff to Brock in the fact that he's going to be able to take care of brawlers clear across the map, no matter which side which lane they're on. So that's really fantastic for Brock. His super works pretty well, and I think it got a little bit of a buff because he can see further distance and just kind of be able to pay more attention to where all of the brawlers are on the map. Overall, this puts Brock at a +1 for the update, which isn't a ton, but it's better than some of these other brawlers. Up next, we got Ricochet. He got a -1 for auto, simply because it's not really that useful at very long distances, but it's actually pretty useful when they're really up close, because he can dish out a ton of damage if he hits all of his shots on a brawler, and a brawler getting really close range to him, if he's able to do that, that's really great. Now for aiming himself, he got a -2. It's kind of difficult and tricky to aim with Ricochet, and there's a lot of things to pay attention to. Definitely a higher skilled brawler when it comes to aiming for that. So 3 for sight, simply because he has so much more control of the map. It's a huge buff, that sight, being able to do that with Ricochet, long range brawler, really huge for him. It's kind of like just watching the game from a long distance and be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna take out this person over here. It's a really strong thing. If he can keep people away from him, Ricochet's going to be really strong, simply just because of that. Also, his super, I gave him a 2 for that, because he's really great. I mean, it's really fantastic to be able to have such control and sight of the entire map, and as long as you're paying attention to where enemy brawlers are, he's going to be pretty good. Overall, that puts him at a 2, which is a benefit for Ricochet. Up next is Nita. Now, she got a 1 for auto, and the reason why is because most of the time with Nita, you're attacking people right as they get into their range, or right before they get into your range, so you deal out a little bit of damage, and that auto doesn't work unless the enemy brawler is within your range. So it can help sometimes, and it's overall a more benefit, but most of the time you're actually going to want to be able to aim, which for Nita, she got a 2 for aiming, because she has such a wide spread for her attack. It's actually pretty easy for her to attack and actually hit brawlers, so that's nice right there. For sight, she got a little bit of a nerf just because she's a little bit more shorter range brawler, because that means that she's going to have a little bit more difficult time getting closer to those long range brawlers. For super, I put her bear right at a 0. Okay, the negative to the bear is that she'll just drop it like right there if you hit that button, so that's not really a great thing, but it's not also that bad, so I put her right at 0, which overall puts her at a 2. Next, we got Bo with an auto of 1. The reason why is because sometimes it's helpful, more than times it's really not that actually helpful, because that auto feature does not include the range of the explosives at the end of his arrows. So it's a lot, but most of the time you're better off just actually using your regular attack, which he got a -1 for that aiming, just because it's kind of tricky to figure out, okay, how are these going to swipe left, are they going to swipe right? It's a little tricky for Bo. For sight, he did get a 2 for sight, simply because that he's a really long range brawler. He's not super long range, a medium to long range brawler, and that means that having that extra sight really can be a benefit to Bo. For super, I put it as 0 because his super doesn't really it's not really benefited a ton by anything here. That gives him a total of a +2. Up next, we got Spike. For auto attack, I gave him a 1, simply because sometimes it's helpful, more times it's actually helpful, because it actually spritz even if you do miss with his spikes, then those spikes burst off and actually are likely to hit brawlers. So give him a 1 there. sometimes they're not really, it's not really that helpful. For aiming, I gave him a -1 simply because his attack projectiles go so slowly. Because they're slow, it's easy to dodge them. So aiming is pretty critical for Spike if you're going to be using that. But overall, I don't know, it's a toss-up between aiming and using auto attack for him. His sight, I gave him a 1 because it's helpful for him to be able to see where enemy brawlers are, especially if he has his super ready to go and be able to control the map that way. But it doesn't benefit him as much as some of those longer range brawlers. For super, I gave him a 2, and the reason why is because he's able to see those brawlers a little bit better, and his super is going to be able to do a great job at slowing people down, which then means he can just spam that auto attack, and they're just going to more likely than not hit all those brawlers in there because they're just so slow. Overall, this puts Spike at a +3, which is okay. Up next, we got Pam. I gave her a 2 for auto attack because it's actually pretty great. Like, that wide spread at that far distance does a great job at almost guaranteeing that she's going to be hitting your enemy brawlers. For aiming, it's pretty easy to aim with her. For sight, it helps a little bit because she's able to pay attention. Typically, she's like a gem carrier, so like what's going on to the left, what's going on to the right of me, really easy for her to do that. So it doesn't really influence a lot of her like attacks and things like that, but she can see where her teammates are, and that can help in some circumstances. Now, I gave her a -1 for super, and the reason why is if you just hit that super button, it just drops the turret right where she's standing, wherever she's at, and sometimes that's not very great, and so you typically want to put it in a very specific placement, and that skill to be able to quickly swipe and drop it where you need it to be can take a little bit of practice. So overall, I gave her a 3, which means that she's a little bit better overall, I think. Up next, we have Crow with an auto attack of 2, and the reason why is because if enemy brawlers are really close, it's really easy for him to swipe 3 times and deal a ton of damage and land all those daggers on those people. Really handy there. For aiming, it's actually, for him, I gave him a 1 for aiming, and the reason why is because it's pretty easy to hit people because of that wide spread that he has there. As a medium range brawler, sight does help him a little bit, so I gave him a 1 there. For super, I gave him a -1. The reason why is because when he uses his super, he'll jump towards the closest, he'll jump right on the spot where the closest enemy brawler is, and that's really useful if you actually land on the correct brawler, okay? Because if you jump up and land right where they're at, and then you auto attack 3 times, then you land your daggers that you go all the way around you, and then also 3 swipes, and you can quickly take people out, especially if they're low on ammo and they're not able to deal much damage to you very quickly. That means Crow's really great in those circumstances, but the jump feature, actually, it's really hard to tell where you're going to go. So I've played plenty of times where I meant to go attack one brawler and he jumps to a different brawler, and I was like, what, he has 7 stars, like I want to kill him, and this guy's a Shelly who's gonna kill me in my bush, right? So gave him a -1 there, but overall that means he has a +3 for this update. Next is Daryl. For auto attack, I gave him a 2, which is pretty good. Not quite as good as Shelly or Bull, and the reason why is because he shoots off those 2 different shots, and so the auto doesn't. It's weird to line that up like that. For aiming, I gave him a 2 there because it's pretty easy to aim with him, especially when you get closer to those enemy brawlers. For sight, I gave him a -2 because it really hurts these close range brawlers to have really large sight because it's hard for them to try and sneak up on people. So I gave him a -2 there. For his super, I actually gave him a 2, and the reason why is because now you can see more of the map, and so his super, you can actually more likely see where you're going to end up by using his super. So I really like that. Overall, this puts Daryl at a 4. 4 points better for Brawl Stars. It's kind of a weird ranking system, but I hope it's helpful. Up next, we have Mortis. Now, for Mortis, auto attack is a saving grace for Mortis noobs like me, okay? Because if you can get close to enemy brawlers, you just tap 3 times, and he just goes swipe, 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 and they're gone. Like, it's really easy. Takes way less skill than it used to, and I like that because I sucked at Mortis, like seriously. Now for aiming, it can be a little tricky to figure out aiming, but overall I gave him a 2 because he does have that wide attack range, so it's pretty easy to attack where you're trying to. Now that being said, Brawl Ball was tricky. When I was trying to figure out how to play Brawl Ball, that's going to take some skill between swiping to like self-passing and things like that. It's going to be a little tricky for Mortis for Brawl Ball, but Brawl Ball is going to be a little bit tricky overall. That's for another video though. For Sight, I gave him a -2 because this means that people are going to be able to see him. It's going to be more difficult for him to sneak up on enemy brawlers. And then for Super, I gave him a 2 because it's really easy to just tap that super button and those bats go to the closest brawler, and it has a really wide range, so you're almost guaranteed to hit them every time, which is fantastic. Overall, this puts Mortis at a +5 points. Now we've got Colt. I put auto as a 1. Most times it's not often used for Colt. You're gonna mostly use aiming. But when you do, it's really useful, especially if you have an enemy brawler that is chasing and he's running away. Like, if he can land those shots with that auto perfectly lined up, it's going to deal a ton of damage, which is really useful. I give Colt a 0 for aiming because it's pretty easy to generally shoot in the right direction for his shots. And then you can use his star power with his added speed to be able to kind of like swipe where you're trying to attack the brawler. So 0 there, I felt like the right place for him. Now for Sight as a medium to medium-ish long range brawler, Sight was really helpful for him, especially because his super, where I gave him a 2, that super can go so far across the map, and being able to see enemy brawlers from way across to the other side of things and get them with his super is a huge bonus, so I gave him a 2 right there. Overall, that gives him a total of 5 points for Colt. Now let's go ahead and talk about Tara. Auto attack for Tara, really fantastic change for her, especially because she's got a spread anyway, so even if people are from a distance, auto attack is almost always going to hit them as long as they're within range. And then also, if you're really close up, hitting that 3 times, 3 shots on those brawlers is going to be really fantastic. Now for aiming, it's a little tricky to aim with Tara, but it's overall beneficial simply because she does have that spread, so you're more likely than not to actually hit those brawlers. For Sight, I gave her a 0. The reason why is because it's beneficial for her to have her super and she can see longer ranges, but she does a little damage really far away, and so typically she's best kind of closest up once she has that super built up. And so I give her a 0 where she has positive and negative on there. And then for super, I give her a 2 because she is able to use that super really fantastic, pull people in, and then auto attack 3 times. You're almost always going to hit enemy brawlers, and that's really fantastic. That's what Tara is really the best at. Overall, giving her a bonus of 6 points. Now let's go ahead and talk about Shelly. Shelly has a 3 for auto attack, and the reason why is because if she gets anywhere close to that enemy brawler hiding in the bush, she's gonna spam that 3 times and just blast them out of their minds, right? That's how Shelly's gonna be. Now for aiming, it's really easy to aim with her because she's got that nice wide spread if you are trying to aim with her, though most of the time you're gonna be using her auto attack. Now for Sight, the overall map size increasing really is going to be make it really tough for Shelly to get into those bushes hidden without people seeing her, and because she doesn't have a ton of HP, that Sight does especially influence her as compared to like other brawlers that also need to get close up but have a little bit more tankiness. Now her super, I gave her a 3 for her super because just similar to attacking, her super, you get anywhere close and you hit that super, you're going to deal almost all of that damage to an enemy brawler, and that's absolutely insane. Now this puts her overall at a positive 6 points, which is pretty fantastic. Next is Bull, who is very similar to Shelly, just a couple of quick changes. The fact that the auto attack is similar to Shelly, right? Super easy to land 3 attacks and it just deals tons of damage. For aiming, also once again, it's pretty easy to hit people because of that wide spread. For Sight, the Sight does hurt brawlers like Bull because Bull needs to get up close range to be able to deal damage, but not quite as much as Shelly, so we got a -2 there because he's a little bit more tanky and able to withstand some of those blasts. Now his super, I gave him a 2 for his super because he is, overall it's really good. Like, he's able to see where he needs to go, and you can actually see the full range, especially if you're going from left to right, of where he's going to land, so he can plan his attacks accordingly. Really fantastic for Bull right there. Overall, a positive 6, which is pretty great. Next, we got El Primo. Auto attack, a 3. Obviously, it's so easy to take people out if you get anywhere close to them because you just spam that attack button and just wait till you just close the gap, and then they're dead. For aiming, similar thing, widespread, pretty easy to attack with him. For Sight, similar to Bull, where it's difficult for him to get close. But he's a little bit tankier, so it's a little bit easier than Shelly. So he got a -2 there. For his super, I gave him a 3. And the reason why is because if he can land his super anywhere close to anybody, First of all, you auto super, it will jump directly to where that person is, so that's really helpful. And then you just spam that attack button, and it's almost instant death for anybody that happens to, because he just jumps, lands, and just directly punches them. Like, it's so good. So overall, he gets a total of 7 points, which is really close to the highest. It's not quite, but really fantastic for El Primo. Lastly, we've got Poco, okay? 2 for auto attack, and the reason why is because Poco, he's got a really wide spread, and it doesn't matter how close enemy brawlers are, and so attacking a brawler at the middle of that spread at a further distance, doesn't matter if they go left or right, they're gonna get hit, they have to fall back. So auto attack is actually pretty great for Poco. For aim, really easy to aim with Poco because of that wide spread. For sight, I gave him a 1 because it's gonna be beneficial for him to be able to see if enemy brawlers are coming to the left or right. Typically Poco's a gem carrier, so that's right there. Super, I gave him a 3, and the reason why is his super is actually really easy to use. When you need to use it, you just one tap, and it will automatically shoot where you are. Obviously it's going to heal you, and then also to the closest enemy brawler that needs healing, and just automatically, like, you don't even have to swipe to the general direction, you just hit it and it's going to go right towards that person, which is really fantastic for Poco. Really excited about that. Overall, that gives him 8 points, which is the most positive change to any brawler on here. Okay guys, now we talked about all these different brawlers, how it influences things. I know that these numbers were just kind of like random and weird. It's the best way that I could think of to try and organize all of my thoughts on how the brawlers were going to be influenced in the various different categories, because some brawlers got a buff in one way, like sight, being able to see further, and then some brawlers got a buff a different way, like being able to auto attack, really benefiting some brawlers and really not benefiting other brawlers. So definitely the best way I could try and come up with, but I want to know what you guys think about this, especially once you get that chance to actually play some matches. And for now, this is Kairos time ticking by, and we will see you in the arena.